Pulsar Studio.
Video games are the youngest artistic medium, and since their emergence, they have managed to create complex titles with multiple layers of depth. This is Checkpoint, and today we are going to discover an example of how they do it. The art of making a video game is based on generating analogous experiences from actions known as mechanics, and from the metaphorical interpretation of the interaction between mechanics and also through their setting achieved by the aesthetic and artistic style. In each game, there are one or more main mechanics and systems, which serve as the basis for the experience, but it is also necessary to enrich and complement them through the implementation of secondary mechanics and subsystems. The creative challenge of the developers to create different levels of experiences has led to the creation of multiple layers of depth and complexity in a single work, going to the point of creating complete games on a smaller scale within the total experience, that which today we know as minigames. Minigames are very effective because they fulfill very important functions in the progress of the experience. Every game, whether narrative or not, has a development structure that passes through different levels of intensity. No matter what level you start with, progress will go through an increase in intensity and then slow down before gradually building back up to a new high. This cycle continues throughout the experience until it reaches its conclusion and closure. Players need a variety of experiences throughout this progression to help them stay engaged within the rhythm and pace of the game and avoid being overwhelmed or bored by the changes in intensity with repetitive actions. The minigames are an ideal resource in the moments of less intensity because interacting with alternative mechanics and taking a break from the main progress of the narrative helps to keep the experience fresh and new throughout the entire game. But this does not mean that any group of sub-mechanics and systems will meet the objective. Designing a minigame is the same challenge as designing a normal game, where the rules, mechanics, and interactions must work congruently and be tested and polished. Not every minigame is appropriate for any experience. For a minigame to work, enhance and enrich the total experience, it must have an unique element, but at the same time it must interact with the other systems without breaking them and coexist harmoniously with the narrative and setting of the game. Here's a look at some of the best examples from the most talented development teams that can serve as learning and inspiration. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is an extraordinary game in almost every aspect, and it has an impressive amount of content. It is so complete and has so much effort and dedication in the design that this can be appreciated even in its minigame. Wendt is a trading card game with tactics, strategy, and bluffing mechanics. The universe in which the cards are set is the same as the one of The Witcher, using the same characters, creatures, and objects that players can appreciate in other parts of the experience. This minigame shows many of the characteristics that make a good minigame. The design and mechanics are completely independent of the essential mechanics and systems of the game, serving as a good recreational and distraction activity. The design and development of the minigame has the same testing and polishing work as the rest of the mechanics, being a complete, functional, and fun experience. In addition to being simple to understand and learn, but also giving opportunity to improve. The rules and development of the game are simple but brilliant. The game could be set in another context or universe, but at the same time, the world of The Witcher is ideal. The dynamic of deceiving and imposing power and domination is a perfect analogy for the conflicts that happen in the game, as well as the talents and abilities of each character or creature that is represented in form of cards, even having heroes with a lot of weight and power as Yennefer, Ciri, or Geralt. The aesthetic design of the interface and cards has the same work as all the other objects and elements of the game, even though it was developed without a budget and was done in the free time of many of the team members. The minigame is an integral part of the universe and the experience, striking a fair balance between being optional but very difficult to avoid. Every minigame must be an experience that does not feel forced on the player, but at the same time, it must be well designed among the other systems so that the player has an incentive to try it and not miss it. For Wendt, the designers managed to include it in such a way in the universe that it is an indispensable part of it. Almost any character with whom you interact can be an opponent in a Wendt match because it is part of the culture and folklore of that world, in addition to having secondary quests with very interesting developments and rewards in which part or all of the progression of it is done by playing and winning matches of the minigame, in addition to having a collection component in which players can get more and better cards by defeating opponents. Fable II is a role-playing adventure game with many well-designed side activities that are part of the total game experience. However, the Pub game series, consisting of 3 different casino-style games, is the one that has the greatest capacity to hook the player. The games are simple and easy to understand because they are adaptations of real casino games with some adjustments to the rules and adaptation to the world of Fable that strike a precise balance between familiarity and novelty. The combination of gambling, decision-making, and strategy, designed with a good testing process, makes them very attractive and engaging experiences, just like it happens in a casino. But the experience of these minigames always feels part of the world and the activities it offers. As in Wendt, pub games are part of the game universe and are a narrative and playability component because they are aesthetically designed for it and require the game currency to buy the necessary chips to play, connecting with the economy system of the game, which is an important one for the whole experience. Although it is delicate to use chance to design systems, mechanics, and minigames, because on the one hand it is impossible to use absolute randomness in a computer code, and also because it is difficult to avoid the perception biases that we have when interpreting probability, in Fable II pub games, the idea of adapting existing casino games mitigates this problem. Players already know what they are up against to, and are predisposed to low odds of winning, achieving greater surprise and satisfaction when they win relatively easy. The way in which the design of the series of minigames manages to invite the player to try it is by rewarding with the money, achievements, and even objects of great weight in the role-playing experience, such as unique and even legendary weapons or cosmetic objects that allow customization of the appearance of the character. The pub games are not available in every corner of the world though, and can only be accessed in certain cities by interacting with an NPC, which is important to avoid breaking the balance of the game and the time that players spend in this specific activity, allowing them to travel the world and progress the story before reaching the next game. The next example is Fishing in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Although this title has more than one activity that could be considered a minigame, the best example is perhaps fishing in Lake Hylia. Although the activity is simple, it is the perfect metaphor in which Link takes some time off from the hard mission in which he must rescue Zelda and stop Ganon, and he does it with a sport that is used worldwide for that purpose. But it is not just about the metaphor, it is also about the design of the mechanics and how well this is done. Like any good minigame, the rules and mechanics are easy to understand, but at the same time, there are different levels of challenge and complexity. It is not easy to catch bigger fish, and you need to go through a learning and improvement process to do so. This challenge is accompanied by a good reward that complements the moment of dispersion and relaxation, and makes it even more worthwhile. Because by achieving the highest score, it is possible to obtain one more heart and an object that allows you to breathe longer underwater. Both items are optional for the adventure, but their usefulness is good enough to make them desirable. Bethesda games are well known for many things, but there's no doubt one of them is their lockpicking system in both Fallout and the Elder Scrolls games. The mechanics are the same in both franchises, and it may be debatable whether it counts as a minigame or not. However, it is worth highlighting because of the way it is designed within the overall experience and how it blends in with the other systems. As they are role-playing and open-world exploration games, a crucial element in these titles is to search for and obtain objects, whether aesthetic or with some function, that contribute to the adventure and serve as a tool for the players. One way to create a challenge and restrict access to all areas and hide objects is through locks that require finding a key by killing an enemy who carries it or by completing a quest. However, every open-world game benefits from having lots of freedom and giving each player a choice in how they will approach their adventure, and this is where the mechanic of picking locks comes in. The developers give the player the decision of how to access those places or objects, in the conventional way or by lock picking. Picking the locks cannot always be the easier than conventional way, because if so, every player would always choose this option. That is why there are different and progressively more difficult levels to this. Just having difficulty levels will also cause that, after a certain level, the optimal strategy is the conventional one and nobody experiences this mechanic. To avoid this and complement the system, the ability to pick locks is used as one of the many that can be increased by leveling up and assigning points. In this way, if players want to be able to open locks by picking them, they can do so by sacrificing points of experience in that skill that cannot be used in another one, and by investing time using this mechanic and not others. The mechanic itself is very simple and depends a lot on the level that the player has in the skill, but it is well designed enough to always require the execution of the player and not only be a parameter that is fulfilled or not within the game code. The art of designing a good minigame is at the same level of difficulty and relevance as designing a normal game. The proof is that many minigames have become titles and are sold and distributed on their own due to their success. There is no doubt that implementing this resource in a large experience has the potential to increase the overall level of the work, as long as these are designed as an element belonging to the vision and have the same testing and polishing work as the rest of mechanics and systems. These 4 great examples are proof of it. And you? What other memorable minigames have you experienced? What other elements do you think are important for minigames to work? Leave it in the comments below. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Checkpoint. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this to keep discovering the art in making and designing video games. See you next time!